Did you know that Bitcoin uses as much energy as some entire countries? Bitcoin has a massive network of miners called ASICs that require a lot of energy to mine and secure the Bitcoin network. So, for Bitcoin to be successful, it's critical to have access to cheap and reliable energy. That's why miners are moving in flocks to Texas and running their mining operations off of natural gas wells, wind turbines, solar farms, and on-grid applications. But up to now, there hasn't been a place for Bitcoin miners and energy producers to connect with each other. That's why Digital Wildcatters is bringing everyone to the energy capital of the world, Houston, Texas, for 2 days of network and learning at the premier mining event, Empower. Maybe you're an experienced miner or energy producer that's looking for partnerships, or maybe you're new to the space and you want to learn and get your foot in the door. There's going to be content and opportunities for people from all different backgrounds. March 30th to 31st, Houston, Texas, Empower. Get more information at digitalwildcatters.com.
What's up, Wildcatter Nation? Welcome back to another episode. It's so funny. Colin and I are it seems like lately we're just taking turns. He's on one episode, I'm on the other episode, but you know what, it works out. Got my buddy Spencer Randall from CryptoEQ here. We were just talking about how like you're stepping back into the canon. You guys were like one of the founding members of, well, it's not really the canon anymore. This is the OG canon, right? This is the
waiting room was the original branding.
Yeah, we started in a closet down the hall. It was literally like, so this place was jam-packed, and it was like in the heyday of the canon when it first started off. There was just like startups everywhere doing really cool stuff. The common areas were jam-packed. People were playing ping pong. There's people always in the kitchen. Like everywhere you went, you were bumping into like innovative founders who were like tackling really big ideas. So we were like, we definitely want to be here because we had officed it like WeWork back in the day. But what we found with WeWork, as cool as like the aesthetics were, that it was a whole lot of like tax attorneys, lawyers,
very corporate,
like very much like corporate feeling. It wasn't like the founders. And then we came here and we're like, this is grungy, these are founders. And we're like, give me whatever you have. And they're like, we have this closet, it's a storage closet, has no windows, I'll give it to you for like $600 a month. And we said, we'll take it. And so that's like where Wildcatters was kind of born. So it's cool that we're
that resonates with me because like Allure for us was, at the time we were moonlighting and weekending to build CryptoEQ, to build our venture, to build our passion project. And the last thing we wanted to do was like leave the office or come in on the weekend and feel like it was corporate.
Mm-hmm.
So we wanted a completely different feeling. And the energy at the Canon campus was much like the energy I felt at university.
Yeah.
Everyone was curious, everyone was excited, and everyone was building. And that was fun. Yeah.
Do you feel, and this is like no shade on the Canon if anybody's listening, but do you feel like that transferred over to that new building across the street?
It's a lot more polished, I will say that. And so it attracts a different kind of entrepreneur.
Yeah. I camped out there. So whenever we came here, before we officially like signed the agreement, I was camped out there for, call it 2 months in the main building, just kind of hanging out in the common areas and stuff. And it seemed like, whereas here, everybody was out and kind of like mingling, and you go over to like the main building and it's like everybody kind of just stayed in their offices. And it's like there was like nobody in the common areas.
Yeah.
Like nobody really knew anybody anymore. Like it wasn't like as close knit. And so I just found that was kind of interesting that by moving into a bigger space with more polish, like what it kind of facilitated.
More, people kind of kept to their offices. I don't like offices at all. So I'm always out in the open space.
Yeah.
Or in the library.
Yeah.
The main building.
So this episode's going to be like way different.
Yeah.
So if you're listening, this is probably not going to be like a traditional episode. Spencer and I were just chatting before we got on the mic, like, hey, what do we want to talk about? And I think that we've done a whole lot of episodes around like Bitcoin mining and stuff. And Spencer's a huge kind of crypto guy. Also understand how it kind of plays to energy. But I think we're just going to go down some rabbit holes today. This is going to be more of like a Joe Rogan episode, right?
Sure.
And so we're just going to go down a whole lot of rabbit holes and talk about all things crypto, how that pertains to energy. So if that's something you're interested in, definitely stay on. This is what we're going to get into. If you're looking for more of a traditional episode, we'll catch you on the next one. So Spencer, real quick, before we get into it, just give some context. Like what is CryptoEQ? How long ago did you guys start? What do you guys do?
Yeah. So we started building a community around crypto. This was before we knew what CryptoEQ could be or would be in Houston.
Mm-hmm.
So the founding and a mission was rallying people around learning about digital assets, learning about things like Bitcoin. And I was going to all kinds of community events in Houston, Austin, San Antonio, all around Texas, and at some points even the country, to meet really smart people that wanted to learn about crypto. And from there, I invited them to what we're doing in Houston and built out a community with my team.
What year was this?
This is 2017.
Okay.
Early 2017 is when I had kind of that moment that I think a lot of people that invest in crypto have, where you really started listening.
2017 was a big year. You got to think like that was the year that ICO, so initial coin offerings, got a lot of steam, right? And I feel like this whole NFT push is very much what ICOs were in 2017. I think you have, 2% are really, really great projects, and the other 98% are absolutely garbage, as with anything with like tons and tons of hype. And so, 2017 was a time where you got to think that like Bitcoin made some big jumps, Ethereum made some big jumps. I feel like that's when people really started to kind of take it seriously, as opposed to before it was very much like this underground hacker culture thing, right?
Yeah. So in 2017, especially early 2017, it was very much an alternative investment, and still had a lot of momentum around it being nefarious, and something that Bitcoin and things like it were cause for concern, may not be legitimate. So that we started building in that dark period, and there was a lot of excitement in 2017. We started building this community, and around late 2017, early 2018, right, the market topped and the exuberance and speculation washed out. And at that point in the community, I could see, when the tide went out, who was really serious about this investment, this technology, this asset class, and who would be interested in building a company within this industry. And that's how I met my partners. And so in 2018, when everything was quiet, we started building the product. You talk about the grungy closet, right? And kind of building in the dark. Well, for us, we built in the dark of the bear market. And one of the things that I think would resonate with a lot of people that have watched oil and gas for decades and invest a lot of their lives in oil and gas is crypto is very volatile as well. And so you have your bear markets, you have your dark periods, and that's when, if you really have conviction, you double down and you build. And that's exactly what we did. And so we built this platform to scale up what we were doing in our community in Houston, so that we could help the world, and we could help people all around the world learn about digital assets. And so CryptoEQ is founded, built, and maintained by our co-founders to provide independent research and market insights. And so we see billions of people onboarding to digital assets over the next few decades, and we're helping people navigate that process, because we know this industry is messy, complicated, hard to understand. We've lived that, we've walked that line, and we want to help people make it easier. So we built a product we wish we would have had in 2017.
So what is it? Are there any kind of products that are comparable to that, like say in like the stock space?
Yeah, we brand ourselves as the North Star of crypto. So a guiding light, somebody that can help you guide you along your crypto journey. Some people have dubbed us the Morning Star of crypto, which I do think is an apt comparison, because of how methodical our research process is. You mentioned how fleeting some of these projects can be, right? Maybe 1% of the NFT market or 1% of newly launched projects actually are going to solve any kind of real problems and actually deliver something to the market. And so we take a very methodical approach to identifying that 1% that is quality, that is here to change the world, that is potentially something that is a protocol that they'll be here for decades.
What was your background, just real quick, before we get into the rabbit holes?
Yeah, so engineer. So I studied at Rice, graduated in 2013 with a mechanical engineering degree, and I spent about 6 years in industry. I got my professional engineering license. I put in all that work to climb, the kind of the pinnacle of engineering, which is to be a licensed engineer. And when I got up to the top of that mountain, I looked around and I was like, I don't see myself doing this for 20 more years or 30 more years. And just got real honest with myself. And like, once I'd achieved that big goal that I set for myself, I started to think about entrepreneurship and building something. And I had already, in 2019, I was already a couple of years down the Bitcoin rabbit hole. And at that point, it wasn't really a choice. It was more like a calling. And I'd learned a lot about other digital assets, and developed systems with the team to trade and invest in crypto. And at that point, shortly after earning my license, I went full time on CryptoEQ.
What is like Bitcoin? What is your thesis? Like, what is the the importance of Bitcoin and maybe what is the importance of Bitcoin, say, in kind of our daily lives as more and more things. Like I'm kind of holding more over time. I'm trying to hold more crypto than I am dollars. Like that's
Yeah.
something that I wouldn't have imagined doing even a few years ago. What do you think is the importance of, say, and it could maybe something beyond Bitcoin, but Bitcoin, crypto, all of this in general, Web3, what's the importance of that over the next like 5 to 10 years? And like kind of what's your thesis? How do you think about this?
Yeah. My entry point was before I invested in Bitcoin, I was a precious metals investor. So I bought my first ounce of gold when I was 10 years old. And I would not have done that without the influence of my uncle, who was a gold bug. And so my late uncle, from a very young age, taught me the principles of sound money, why gold is a responsible thing to allocate to, if not as an investment, as an insurance policy for your wealth. And so being the type of person that bought gold young, that's the thesis that I built around Bitcoin early 2017 for myself was this is digital gold. This is gold 2.0, and this is going to change the world. And so that's why I started buying Bitcoin. And now in 2021, going into 2022, one of the really exciting things is you don't even have to buy Bitcoin anymore. I mean, you can turn energy assets into Bitcoin. You can earn Bitcoin as yield. You can convert your airline credit card points program into a Bitcoin back rewards program.
That's what we do.
Yeah.
Like
so,
all of our credit card rewards are
yeah.
literally just, we have a partnership with Coinbase. We convert it into Bitcoin.
It's certainly, we don't have to talk about investments. It's certainly more risky to hold any kind of value in a company's reward program than it is to hold a reward program in Bitcoin. So you don't even have to take any of your disposable income and invest. You can now earn Bitcoin passively through all of these wonderful options that have come online in the form of service providers. But it's so much easier to gain exposure to things like Bitcoin in 2021 than it was 4 or 5 years ago. It's like what we're doing. We're making it easier to learn about crypto because there's companies making it easier to gain exposure. So I just encourage anyone that's still on the fence to experiment with some of these options that have come online. And Bitcoin is the most responsible, best place to start when it comes to crypto.
Why are you so bullish on Bitcoin specifically?
It's the most secure. It's immutable. It's censorship resistant. It is the one protocol that we've developed that truly had a fair launch. And when I say we, I mean the industry. It's the one protocol that has come out of the crypto industry that is sufficiently decentralized, has proven to be immutable, has weathered all of these attacks, forks, without any real cause for concern. I mean, there's never been a point in the Bitcoin network's history where I was concerned for the network. The uptime is fantastic. So there's really no other protocol that I think holds a candle to Bitcoin's security and censorship resistance. Now, once we jump out of the sound money use case, I think there's great conversations to be had about utility around other assets. But if we're talking about sound money, there's no comparison. Bitcoin has closed the door on the competition there. And as someone that's stared at this for 5 years, I say that very confidently.
It seems like the days of like rapid volatility in the crypto markets compared to where it was before is maybe behind us. What do you think?
The rapid volatility of the whole industry?
Yeah.
Yeah, I haven't seen data to support that we wouldn't experience a large drawdown in the next 1 to 2 years. Personally, I'm prepared for as severe of drawdowns as we've seen in previous cycles. I was buying into this kind of dampened market cycle narrative with all of the institutional capital that we saw flowing into the market. But the summer showed us that 50 and 60% drawdowns still are on the table. Historically, we've seen 80% drawdowns. So, my personal target, if the market cycle plays out the way I think, we could incur a 70% drawdown from the top of this cycle. So that's my personal planning. That's not financial advice. But that's how I see it from staring at this.
So for somebody who's like kind of new to this, right? It's somebody who's completely new to Bitcoin. And, we kind of preface the conversation with Bitcoin is kind of like digital gold. And we're talking about a potential 70% drawdown. and they're saying, well, how is this digital gold, right? What's your kind of rebuttal to that?
Well, I mean, we're talking about 2, 3, 4 decades at a time.
Yeah.
I mean, if you look at the gold chart, I've traded gold, I've invested in gold. That's a very volatile chart as well, especially if you go back 3 decades. So, I mean, you're seeing something transformational happen. And if you're buying Bitcoin as an investment, then you ought not think about it 1, 2, 3 years at a time. You're thinking about investing what you can lose in something that is changing the world, is here to stay, and is the soundest money on earth. And so if you're taking that thesis, then I think thinking about it 10, 20, 30 years at a time is the more responsible thing to do.
Mm-hmm. Do you have a certain price target for, say, Bitcoin in the next couple of years?
Well, my personal
Not investment advice, but
yeah, not investment advice. My personal financial planning is I am more conservative for a crypto investor. 6-figure Bitcoin for me is a great time to lock in profits on all other assets that I hold. I'm locking in profits on the way up. Personally, at 6-figure Bitcoin, $100,000 Bitcoin, for me, for this market cycle, that's nearing the point where it could be so much volatility to the upside that the difficulty around timing the top, it takes a tremendous amount of skill, some luck, and I'm not in the game of trying to time an exact top as a trader. So when I see 6-figure Bitcoin, to me, that's we're coming close to the end of the market cycle.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So outside of Bitcoin, we're talking about digital assets as a whole. Like what else are you super bullish about? Is it Ethereum? Is it Solana? Is it Cardano? Is it?
Yeah, I'm interested in a lot of different protocols. It come down to the use case. And so personally, I'm really interested in what's called GameFi, or the intersection of gaming and finance. And for that sector of crypto, why does GameFi exist? The problem that it's solving is it's empowering gamers around the world, which that's a massive market, to monetize their efforts in game directly. So with the rise of things like Twitch, it's become much more profitable to be a gamer. It's become much more sustainable to be a gamer as a vocation, as a job, as an entrepreneur. And so GameFi is empowering you as a gamer not only to monetize on the attention that others would give you as you watch people play games, but monetize what you're building in game or what you earn in game in a marketplace that's associated with the game. So there's these days of you build a World of Warcraft character or a Second Life character up and then sell that on a secondary market to someone else and violate the terms of service. That validates the market need, but we don't have to do that anymore as gamers. Gamers can build up assets, take them to a marketplace, it's very liquid, and turn it into value that they could do whatever they want with. And that can be in the form of stable coins. That could be in the form of protocols like Ethereum. But when you talk about GameFi, Ethereum is really the infrastructure that's making a lot of these games possible and making it possible for other gamers around the world to live off of their blockchain games.
It's crazy to think about, because especially as a kid coming up playing video games, and you're playing video games for hours on end. Your parents are like, "You're never going to make money playing video games. Why do you waste all your time doing this?" And yet now there's kids who make really, really good livings. With this ninja guy makes like $20 million a year, something like that, just streaming him playing games.
Yeah.
On like Twitch.
Yeah.
Which was such a weird concept to me at first when I first learned about that. My youngest brother, who's like 23, was really into the gaming world, and he was talking about, I would just watch these people on Twitch, and I'm like, I didn't understand why you would ever watch somebody play a video game, but it's it's a huge thing.
Yeah. So I joke that I lost friends to World of Warcraft. So I go back to that one a lot because I lived that. So I have a friend, and they get sucked into World of Warcraft, and we couldn't go play basketball anymore because they had to play WoW. They had to play World of Warcraft. They had to build up their character. So it's kind of an addiction, right? And gaming is very addictive. Making money is very addictive, and so these worlds are colliding now in GameFi. You have fun playing a game, you make money playing a game, and you don't necessarily have to monetize on attention or even be in the top 1% of skilled gamers to earn a living.
Mm-hmm.
And it's pretty incredible to think that these games are developing their own economies, their own marketplaces. They're very liquid. and you can, take what you build in game in the form of NFTs. It does tie into NFTs, non-fungible tokens, and liquidate those NFTs as you like, and earn, Ethereum or some other token.
So what are your thoughts on which direction we want to go? There's a lot of different rabbit holes that we can go down.
Yeah. GameFi is a big one.
Let's go back to what you guys do, because I think that can kind of steer the conversation. How do you guys educate the public or your potential or your customers on the crypto? Are you guys writing articles? Are you guys putting out content? Like, walk me through that. Is it analytics?
Yeah, there's a lot of different ways we serve the crypto industry. For the investor persona, that's the most popular persona that uses our web app. They can hop on CryptoEQ.io and read methodical research and reports on different crypto assets. So we have what's called core reports. The truncated free version of the core reports, we call them our abridged core reports, tend to be about 10 to 20 pages of research that follows a 10-point framework. We call that our core rating framework. And we run every asset that we list through this framework. So 10 to 20 pages of free research for 90+% of the crypto market by market cap is our core offering to the industry. And that's thousands.
How often do you release those?
It's thousands of hours of research, and we release a new rating on a monthly cadence.
Okay.
Right. So at this point, being operational for 3 years, we release dozens of these core reports and update them regularly as things change. So that's the core offering. And then on top of that, we build other products. So we help traders with signals. So we help people find excellent entry and exit points for swing trading, for day trading, or for long-term investing, depending on your time preference, your time horizon. We also are doing things with partner organizations. So a great one is the Texas Blockchain Council.
Mm-hmm.
That's really tangible, really easy for folks to wrap their head around. We're building a starter pack for them. So Texas Blockchain Council is doing a heck of a job in Texas, raising awareness around Bitcoin and things like it, and specifically working on being a liaison between regulators and crypto. So helping educate regulators and people that are making policy with the facts of Bitcoin and crypto, which, unfortunately, the regulatory framework and what we're doing in the United States and regulators and policymakers are catching up. And there's a lot of negative momentum we have to overcome as an industry, and the Texas Blockchain Council is helping do that. So we're partnering with them to develop a starter pack so that everyone that walks in the door at a Texas Blockchain Council event has some responsible first steps as they educate themselves, as they learn more about crypto, on how to do this the right way. And so that's another example of a product that's more of a one-off that we'd like to develop more things like for partner organizations.
So let's dive into, I just want to talk about NFTs, because I think there's a lot of applications for NFTs. There's something that we're looking at, like how do we, now that we've got like a really engaged community, across the Wildcatter community, how do we deploy NFTs? I think there's also a lot of instances where the industry could actually use NFTs. A couple different ideas that I've had over the years for blockchain, and I think it didn't necessarily make sense with some of the early iterations, but I think it makes sense as an NFT. What is your kind of thesis on NFTs? Like I said, I think that most projects out there are completely garbage, right? And I think that you have, same with ICOs, and I think you have a small percentage of NFTs that are really interesting projects. And I think that it's interesting that it's kind of made its way into kind of pop culture through art, through profile pictures and stuff. But I think that there's so much utility that can be built into an NFT. And I think eventually my thesis is like the mundane will be NFTs. I think that your driver's license, your passport, the deed to your house, your title to your car, I feel like those can all be NFTs that can instantly be transferred. Like you can transfer ownership instantly to anybody on any kind of secondary market. But like before we get there, like what is that kind of horizon? Like what are the various iterations that NFTs take?
Yeah. Some history it would be fun to start with. So some of the first NFTs were actually on the Bitcoin network, right? So that's a nod to Bitcoin as an OG crypto. And then a lot's happened since then. So, a lot of the NFT market now trades atop the Ethereum infrastructure.
Mm-hmm.
But whether it's the Ethereum protocol, Bitcoin as a protocol, or some other layer one, NFTs as an idea make a lot of sense. Non-fungible tokens, they're unique. They can be a one of one, or they can be a one of 1,000, but they're scarce. And so the same reason Bitcoin makes sense as an alternative investment and a hedge and sound money, this idea of a scarce digital asset in the form of an NFT makes a lot of sense. Personally, I have been pretty hands off on NFTs because of all the exuberance. I mean, as you said, right, 1% of projects, maybe, if that, will matter. And whether it's an ICO, an IDO, or an IEO, or an NFT, so much speculation, so much exuberance, I was hands off. And it really didn't click for me as a use case for art and art investing. And I did not allocate. But for gaming and NFTs around gaming, I did. And so for 6 months, I've been investing in GameFi related NFTs. But this idea of a scarce digital asset, I think is very exciting. And I think that a lot of the use cases you mentioned, whether it's your driver's license, your voter ID card, a lot of these things will exist on a blockchain infrastructure layer one with time. It's just going to take us a long time as a society to migrate in that direction. And that's why it's important for us to educate the public responsibly on what is and is not a protocol and quality digital asset.
This episode is brought to you by our friends at Combow Curve. If you haven't heard, Aries and PhD win are out and Combow Curve is in. Combow Curve is the cloud-based operating system for energy companies. This single integrated platform helps your engineering teams become more agile, precise, and efficient than ever before. For the first time ever, you now generate type curves and forecast thousands of wells accurately and in a fraction of the time. Oh, and it can automatically run these forecasts every single day. What I love most about the Combow Curve team is their work ethic and actually caring about their customers. Every time I talk to the team, Armand, Jeremy, everybody else over there, they're reinvesting into growing the development team to tackle any challenges that their clients may be facing. But don't take my word for it. Go over to combowcurve.com, read the dozens of testimonials on their website from clients like ARM Energy, Laredo Petroleum, Rock and W Minerals, and many more. Request a demo, and these guys will get you taken care of. I think it's so hard to tell. I think there's a couple different, from my perspective of kind of diving into it. I think whenever you have a situation where there's a ton of hype and there's a lot of money being thrown around, you naturally have a lot of projects that are cash grabs. And it was no different in the ICO space. And so the projects that stick out to me are kind of, there's a few. I think that the Bored Ape Yacht Club did a great job in terms of it started off as this art of these 8,000 different apes or whatever.
Yeah.
And then they very quickly built 5 or 6 product lines on the back of this community. And they were able to do that with essentially the royalties from the transactions on that. And so bringing people together in this community of hey, you bought your NFT, which is essentially a ticket into this club, right? And I think about this a lot in terms of clubs and communities and stuff. And traditionally you have, country clubs, you have the Petroleum Club, you have things like that are very much old world. And now this is kind of this new age club of they literally got people together in New York for a 2 or 3 day event, and people are actually able to make real life connections. And now people are talking on Telegram and Discord and all that kind of stuff, Twitter, right? And real life kind of connections and things are coming out of that. I think it's a different way to bring communities together.
Absolutely.
In the same way that our generation kind of got together through AOL Instant Messenger, and then you kind of evolved into MySpace, but then that was still kind of your friends. And then Facebook was still also people that you already knew. And then I think Twitter was the first time where it was you're not necessarily limited to people that you grew up with, and you find new tribes based on things that you're interested in. I think NFTs in this capacity kind of take that to an entirely new level.
Yeah, whether it's the digital wildcatters audience, the CryptoEQ audience, we all started as a community.
Yeah.
So this idea of a non-fungible token for specific communities is very exciting. the Bored Ape Yacht Club is one of the most valuable NFTs, and it's highly traded. CryptoPunks are another good example. Let's give an example of something that wasn't great for the industry. Like in the podcast audience, the Pauls, right? What they did with the Adobe stock photos. They created some art, some NFT art based on Adobe stock photos, and it was like a simple Photoshop. It's not pure art. I mean, it's not purely creative. It's copy paste and some Photoshop. That got ripped apart. I mean, that's not a good project for NFT culture. To just touch up some Adobe stock photos and slap your brand on it and deliver that to your community. I'd say at that point you're doing a disservice to your community.
Yeah.
So there's the 1% projects that are generative art, that are creative from scratch, and then there's a lot of fugazis, a lot of knockoffs. Yeah.
I think one of the most interesting projects that I've watched over time. Huge fan of Gary Vaynerchuk.
Yeah.
He's been talking about NFTs for a while. He's been talking about blockchain for a while. I think a lot of times he was talking about it behind the scenes, as we kind of know now. He's come out and said that, hey, I was talking to a lot of these big names, the Paul brothers, the Mr. Beast of the world, all these celebrities and stuff that he talks to on his podcast. He's been talking with the NFTs with them for years now, and he's kind of just started coming out talking about them publicly. But he launched this VeeFriends projects where he started kind of just drawing these little critters, right? And then kind of coming up with something, and then he NFT'd those. And I was like, I don't think that, my first thought was like, I don't think this is going to work, right? Lesson to be learned here, don't underestimate Gary Vee, because he made $91 million in 30 days, right? And so it's absolutely wild what he was able to do with that. But he also built in a ton of utility. I think that being one of the major differentiators between shit projects and good projects was that those are now entry tickets to VCon, right?
Yeah.
Which is his big conference, right? So you think about, okay, you pay, let's just call it maybe $2,000 for this NFT. You can, take this to the secondary market, but also now if you're a holder, you get access to VCon, which is only limited to other holders of these assets, right?
Yeah.
And so now imagine you go, and then he's like, well, yeah, we're having another one next year. You're going to be out of the country or something. You can't go. Maybe the price of these goes up and you're able to take that ticket now and resell that on the market. That's interesting. That's a really, really interesting concept for like, how do you build utility and value for that community? Whereas like you go to a tradition, like just say you go to CERAWeek. That's a great example. You spend $9,000 at a ticket to go to CERAWeek, right? And then you never get anything else out of that again.
Yeah.
Whereas now you can take that ticket, that experience, they have it every single year. What if you could take that and resell that in the secondary market?
Yeah. So we're seeing a lot of that in the virtual world metaverse space. So these progressive communities, whether it's VeeFriends and what they're doing with NFTs or some of these other ideas, the ticket, the NFT, is giving you not only an exclusive experience, but benefits thereafter. So examples of what could happen if you're holding a ticket for, an exclusive event in a virtual world, a metaverse, a game, you could be eligible for drops, right? So let's talk about the digital wildcatters communities. I mean, the digital wildcatters community has some kind of NFT distribution. Well, when y'all want to do some giveaways, all of a sudden it becomes way easier to distribute and identify who those value. I mean, you value everyone in your community, but those valued members of this event or that event. And it eases the distribution of some of these giveaways and some of these things that you want to do for your community to show them how much you care. And so that's what's happening in these different gaming ecosystems, these different metaverses. You could even call what Gary's done. Some of it does feel kind of like a metaverse.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, he's so, you can say whatever you want, but he's extremely progressive. He's seen a lot of things before they happen, and he's getting a lot of things right.
Have you seen any other cool projects like that you thought were kind of like very unique, ones that have a lot of legs, one that's like there's a unique way of adding utility to a project?
Yeah. So what brought me into the NFT space, I was hands off for a long time. For a long time, I would only accept NFTs as gifts. I wouldn't buy them. my entry point was seeing that you could own these gaming assets and generate yield on top of the NFT. So now I'm no longer passively holding an NFT as an investment. I have a yield bearing asset that I can hold in a portfolio securely that generates passive income streams on top of the underlying asset.
And my assumption would be that the yield is from transaction fees of people trading those assets. Those are pulled together and then paid out essentially as a dividend, right?
There's a lot of ways to generate yield on NFTs. There are platforms where you can lend your NFTs. That could be in a broader marketplace, like renting your NFTs, or that could be in the form of like a gaming scholarship program, in the sense that you put up these assets for other people to use as in-game characters or leverage in game in some capacity. Or certain games allow you to use NFTs as really like pieces on a chessboard, pieces on a board game, pieces in game. And they give you rights to earn and play to earn in the game. So whether it's, an exclusive giveaway or the right to play to earn in an ecosystem, the NFTs are unlocking additional benefits. And in that example, it's in the form of yield. So there's a lot of different ways it could go in terms of dividends, interest, yield on the underlying asset.
I had an idea. It was years ago. So backstory, my entry point into the industry was through building software for E&Ps, right? And so really tackling this data problem in upstream kind of head on. And that was my focus coming into this industry for probably 5 years, the first 5 years that I came in. And so you always think about what is the handoff of assets as you're either buying new assets or you're divesting some assets between oil companies. And one of the biggest issues is that, for one, none of the data is standardized in any sort of format. There's a lot of quality issues. How much is the truth, right? And so with blockchain, I was like, it'd be amazing if you could literally have this immutable ledger of all of the well data, right? But I think as an NFT, it makes the most sense, right? To where you can have these individual wells where each one of them is an NFT. If you were to kind of create some sort of standardization in the way that data was captured, to where you now know exactly this is this, and there's no like room for interpretation anymore, right?
Yeah.
So you go through and do the verification, and now whenever you're, trade like assets could trade hands so freely, and kind of like what's what. Like that's the data problem in oil and gas is one of the biggest issues still today, and I see that as being like this massive undertaking. But is that realistic? I don't know. I just thought it was an interesting idea to know what is the actual real data. So whenever you're actually buying assets, you're like, oh shit, I know what I have.
Yeah, whether it's a company's treasury or your own transactions or oil and gas data, this idea of an open ledger is very interesting. And blockchain specifically is the technology that unlocks this opportunity for a lot of different assets and a lot of different industries.
So we had a oil and gas CEO. I'm not gonna say who it is, but I want to surprise you guys. He came to us recently and he was just like, I want to position our company for the metaverse. And I was like, holy shit, you're probably the only person thinking about that. So we're actually going to start releasing a lot of content with this company, of very much like what D-Rock and Gary Vee did with the daily V's, now weekly V's. We're going to be doing that with an oil and gas company coming here soon, and creating a show once a week, releasing these new episodes. So it's going to be really cool, kind of behind the scenes. Our most popular content still to this day was like whenever we were buying our wells in Oklahoma, we did our first workover. Like that was the start of Digital Wildcatters. And so it's going to be really cool to kind of show behind the scenes. But how do you think about the metaverse? Because there's a lot of different interpretations, right? You've got Facebook rebranding as Meta now, right? And there's some of these conversations are very much focused around virtual reality or augmented reality or entire, virtual worlds. You've got Decentraland. You've got some of these other places where you're buying kind of virtual plots of land. But you've got this other side of the argument where it was like the metaverse is more so a time rather than a digital place. And that kind of resonated with me recently when I got my notification on my phone for how much time I spend on my phone daily. I get those like every single week, and it was like, oh, you were up or down so many hours. And I realized that I was on my phone 7 hours a day. And I'm sitting here thinking about my total attention span that I have when I'm awake. And I'm like, I spend more time looking at digital made up fairy screens, right, through
Yeah.
computers and phones and everything than I do interacting in the entire world or the physical world. So wouldn't that technically kind of be like the metaverse, right?
Yeah, I think it's a continuation of what's already happening. And I think you mentioned screen time. So the metaverse kind of unlocks you from fixation and focal points on a screen, and you're more so stepping into the internet. And so I would argue that a lot of people that are listening to this already are integrated with the internet and are probably addicted to one or more devices. And if you don't believe me, try going a day without a phone. It almost feels like you're missing a piece of yourself, as you're missing your connection, the tool for a lot of the connection to your loved ones, your family, your friends. So I see it as a continuation of what already has been happening. There's a lot of different ways you can go when you talk about a metaverse. For me, what really clicks as somebody that was a gamer, is not a gamer anymore, but there's a period of my life where I played a game for hours every single day for a year. And stepping into that experience with VR, with AR, and really living it is really exciting. So being a more immersive experience in entertainment, whether it's a game or a movie, our surround sound systems and our screens keep getting bigger and better. So why not put on a headset and feel like you really are in the action? And so why not have a more immersive game or movie experience? And then from there, why not have a more immersive virtual experience as you work remotely or talk to friends and family on the other side of the world? I think it's very exciting, and I'm open to the innovation that we're seeing.
I think what's strange for me was that the NFTs entered pop culture, and then it was like almost immediately overnight, this idea of the metaverse also entered pop culture, because I think those two are kind of intertwined in a bit. And then Facebook rebranding, and like, why, what do you think was kind of like the catalyst for that? Was it NFTs? Was it something else? Because in my mind, I have not been thinking about, and I understand that I feel like I'm becoming like the old person now, because like I know like AR and VR and stuff has been a thing for a while. And I actually found some surprising data the other day that Oculus headsets have sold like more than ever. Like those continue to go up, right? But it's not necessarily something that's been on my radar. Like we've made like these massive leaps in kind of innovation to where it's like something that we should be like paying attention to. So when the metaverse like literally came out of nowhere in like the public conversation, it kind of shocked me a little bit. So what do you think was like the catalyst for that? And then kind of like a secondary question is like, I feel like possibly this iteration, very similar to how we just kind of got to NFTs and we went through ICOs and STOs and we went through a lot of different versions. I feel like possibly my opinion of this is that maybe this version of the metaverse is not really what ultimately it's going to be, but this is like the first kind of like way it kind of gets introduced into pop culture, and the main metaverse that really gets adopted looks completely different, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that does make sense. It's been, I think it was someone at Enchain Capital, maybe it was Parker Lewis, that coined the term gradually then suddenly. I know you wrote a piece that was titled Gradually then Suddenly, and that definitely is apt for Bitcoin. And it kind of feels like the metaverse has been gradual, and now it's all of a sudden with Meta's keynote, it's here. I mean, it's so, I think an important thing to say about Meta is that wasn't a flippant decision. They've been building product for years to supplement the metaverse. And so this idea of moving from the meat space to the virtual world or metaverse fluidly is enabled by a product. Oculus, as you mentioned, is a product that's in the Oculus 2, as you said, has been doing well, is a product that keeps getting better. And as product gets better to support.
There's $22 billion in R&D a year.
Yeah.
So it should be getting better.
So as someone that's practiced with a headset, used a headset, some of the things that I'm working on is this feeling of being disoriented. The weight. I've heard a lot of people complain about the weight of headsets, and that's all getting better. And I think that more and more R&D, more and more burn on that side, the product will continue to improve, and it'll feel more fluid. And like people that wear eyeglasses. I mean, after wearing eyeglasses for a while, you don't even notice.
Yeah.
And I think that headsets, the innovation with headsets will get to the point where it's not uncomfortable to wear a headset. And from there, it's more straightforward and easier to jump in and have some fun in a virtual world.
Let's state the obvious. COVID obviously changed the way that we all work, and going from being in the office to kind of working from home for a lot of people, to people are realizing that they still need better ways to collaborate, and it's kind of hard to recreate that, say, via Zoom, but enter Metaverse, enter VR, of now we're able to, like, remote teams are able to collaborate on something just like you would in person, is extremely powerful. Bill Gates said, I think it was like last week, he was like, all like, video meetings will be like in VR in the next like 3 years. And I want to say that's crazy, but also you think about like all it took was a pandemic for all of us to go to like working remotely, working on Zoom. Like, I think pre-pandemic, I think about the number of Zoom calls that I did, and it was like practically none ever. It was mostly just phone calls. And then that completely changed the way that we worked so fast. Yeah. Right. And so now it's not so crazy to think about maybe in 3 years that we're all going to be in VR.
Yeah. I think a lot of the world's already saying yes to virtual connection. I think that the notion of a metaverse can be intimidating, and movies like Ready Player One scare people, right? Mm-hmm. This idea of,
we also got The Matrix coming out like next week too. Well, so like, is that where we're headed?
I got to see that one. Yeah. So there's a lot of pieces, books and movies that have been made around the subject. And, certainly some of these things scare the public, but for me, what I'm interested in opting into is the immersive entertainment experiences and the gaming experiences. I think that'd be very fun. But the world is already saying yes to virtual, and your team experienced this, our team experienced this. In 2019, I was big on in-person meetings. I was really pushing, in-person connection, and we would do a lot of our stand-ups in person, and the team would have to do a lot of commuting all around Houston. And we have people we have people all across the country now. We keep all of our resources and team onshore, but specifically the folks that are in Houston, it's a lot of commuting. We have people from way outside the Beltway coming in. And instead of forcing the team to do that, now that we're all open to virtual connection, we really enjoy skipping the commute. We really enjoy the virtual connection and the speed at which we're able to get things done as we largely work from home. Mm-hmm. So, our team is now remote first, and we enjoy that. And we'd like to certainly continue that work culture. And lots of companies agree. And lots of companies are shifting to remote first, even if historically they'd been an in-person only. So the pandemic has changed the way we work as a company. It's changed the world. And I think it's helped accelerate a move to remote work in the form of a metaverse. Mm-hmm. Whether or not, we'll be on a Microsoft Teams metaverse, big question mark there, right? Or a meta virtual world. But some form of virtual work with a metaverse component is very interesting for us, especially if it's atop a decentralized protocol.
Yeah.
Right? Especially if it's a blockchain-based, censorship-resistant world.
So it's funny to think about Meta, which was formerly Facebook's parent company. I guess, well, it's still the parent company, but it's just renamed. The contrast of like what that means at the core versus, so we've talked about a lot of buzzwords, right? So now we're talking about also Web3, right? And really the core definition of Web3 is, you look at things like the internet itself, right? And it's so controlled by ISPs and telecom providers, and then the big social media guys. Like, those guys really control the internet for the most part, right? Whereas Web3, you're taking that and you're decentralizing it, all these protocols, And then with these various forms of cryptocurrencies or whatever you want to call them, you're also able to like own a portion of the protocol, right? And so you're decentralizing that power. Whereas Facebook's kind of switched to, hey, now we're Meta. It's like, it's still very much Web 2, but trying to kind of bring that into Web 3 because they're still controlling that. And it's not, you're not pushing that power down to the people, which is like the very core of like what Web 3 is all about.
Yeah, from listening to the Meta keynote, Meta seems to be positioning itself more as a fabric of Web 2 than a full-on Web 3 product.
Mm-hmm.
And what I mean by a fabric is that they're an entity that's helping glue a lot of important pieces together for a more immersive experience. But at the end of the day, Meta is still extremely centralized corporation. So what's different about Web 3 and some of the crypto aspects there? If Web 1 was, okay, now you can look at a screen and access a website, and Web 2 was, well, now you can access the mobile wave, and you can access the internet on your phone and access any of these platforms or networks, like some of the social media giants and big tech. Well, then Web 3 to me is very fluid, open, protocol agnostic access, and immersive experience on the internet. So, I don't, with what in a Web3 world, I don't think I'm going to care what social media app I'm on. I'm able to interchangeably move between all these protocols in a fluid way. And so there's some projects that are focused on interoperability between protocols that we've done a lot of research on and that we're very interested in. And so these are blockchain products that in protocols that allow you to move between blockchains fluidly. And that's very exciting for Web3 as you want to move value or information or data between a blockchain, say a Bitcoin, to an Ethereum, to another layer one that maybe hasn't even started yet but will matter. That's really exciting to me. It's this fluid movement of data and information across chains.
That's really interesting. I'm kind of pondering this thought based on something I just said with so much power is so concentrated on those who control the internet, right? So you're still paying your internet bill every single month. I pay like $100 a month to Xfinity, Comcast, or whatever it may be. And that power is concentrated by so few companies. In this whole Web3 conversation, is there anybody who's really thinking about decentralizing almost like either the internet or like maybe an entirely new internet to where now you can own a piece of that in the same way that we just talked about by completely circumnavigating these four major players essentially that we have in the US or however many it is?
Yeah. So there's projects that consider themselves really the backbone of Web3 infrastructure, not in terms of interoperability, but in terms of providing internet.
Yeah.
And we haven't completed our diligence on these projects, so I'm not going to disclose the names because I'm very careful with what I endorse, promote. But there's projects that are helping turn radio frequency into things that you could connect to with your mobile phone. Yeah. And that's very interesting, especially if you live in remote parts of the world, with a lot of people exploring different properties that they want to live at in the crypto industry, and as they prepare for potential downturn in the market or they're locking in profits. If you move to Puerto Rico, for example, your internet is not going to be as good, at least, especially right out of the gate. And there's a lot of places you say this that we take for granted how good we have it here in the States sometimes. So there's projects that are helping build new internet infrastructure for Web3, and that's really interesting that you could buy some hardware for a reasonable price and kind of be your own ISP atop a decentralized protocol. And that has a lot of obvious applications to just your quality of life.
Yeah.
But it also underpins this movement of Web3.
Yeah. Yeah. Being able to decentralize that power. And at the same time, it's like internet is like so important now to our daily lives that it's like it borders on being a utility, right? And then it begs the question is like, is the right to internet like one of our...
Is it an inalienable right? Is it a human right?
Yeah. And it just seems like because that's the way that we interact, and that's the way that it's like you're expected to, pay bills on the internet, and you're expected to have access to email, and you're expected, but you don't get access to that unless you're paying for it.
As a digital native, right?
Yeah.
We grew up with the internet. And if it feels as essential to business operations as water and air,
Yeah.
to be honest.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like we could not do what we do without the internet. And so if like, think about that from like a risk standpoint. If one of the ISPs came down, we think about this for energy all the time. Of putting out, pro oil and gas tweets and stuff sometimes that get absolutely suppressed, whether it be on Twitter, whether it be on LinkedIn. And you think about the deplatforming of Trump, think about the leader of the free world can get completely deplatformed, and what that means to them and how much power is controlled by like tech companies. It's wild to think about what does that mean over the next few years.
Yeah. Censorship.
Yeah.
I don't agree with a lot of things I see on the internet, but I agree with people's right to express their freedom of speech. And my personal kind of principle is as long as you're not hurting other people.
Yeah.
Right. Freedom of speech.
Yeah.
Right. Now, if you're doing something malicious, then that's where you lose my vote of confidence.
Mm-hmm.
But censorship resistance is something that's inherent to the most successful blockchain in the world. That's Bitcoin. And so there's other protocols that certainly have earned our confidence that have different use cases and provide the decentralization and then in turn the censorship resistance of some of these new networks. And so that you could see these social platforms develop around some of these Web3 protocols that could rival some of the tech giants. It's an interesting thing that could play out, and we're watching it very closely.
Yeah, it's super interesting time. Just I feel like we're so blessed to be born during this time to kind of see this absolutely crazy evolution of technology from me starting off with like for one no phone, and as a kid getting like a like a Nokia phone with Snake
sliders
and
and the
that
flip
cool
phones,
and then
Snake still.
Then you get into the
best mobile game.
iPhones, and you get to we're seeing the evolution of like MP3 players, right? Have like
Yeah.
the original iPad or iPod, and the phones and tablets and everything that it's grown into now. It's like wild that you just literally have the entire world at your fingertips.
You've got a computer in your hands.
And I see it with my kids, especially that my oldest is like 3.5, and like the things that he's learned through like YouTube Kids and some of the other apps and stuff that he plays, he is like at the level of what I would expect like a 5 or 6 year old to be at. He doesn't really consume any of this like stupid mind numbing content. It's like all purely educational. The kid's like a sponge. And so it's like weird for me as a parent. It's like, how much do I let them, be on screens? But at the same time, I'm seeing him like outperform, his kind of age group.
Yeah.
It's weird. It's like really weird.
Yeah. I mean, that resonates with me in the sense that, I had limited screen time when I was growing up as part of the parenting. So yeah, where do you draw the line? Especially if it's an effective tool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, dude, this was had nothing to do with what we normally talk about, but I loved it. It was like I said, I think this was like very much like a Joe Rogan episode of just diving deep into the world of, blockchain, crypto, and NFTs, and Web3 and Metaverse, and like this is probably like, I'm sure a lot of people like know about some of these things, but I'm glad we kind of were able to like dive into some of these topics and
fun.
Just kind of explore the way that the world's going. Just because I think that a lot of these buzzwords are talked about so much now on different publications, people seeing them on social media, but maybe don't really know what that means. So I think this was a lot of fun, and so obviously if you guys are listening and you're wanting to kind of get into the crypto investing space, you want to educate yourself. These guys are doing the Lord's work out there. So what's the website? CryptoEQ.io.
CryptoEQ.io, and if you use the promotional code DW for the Digital Wildcatters audience, you get a discount today.
Cool. Awesome, guys. Go check that out. We'll get back to our normal show next week. Thanks for joining us.